This video is going to help you get crystal clear on how car dealerships make big profits off of you by using something called the 4-circle technique. Coming up next on Holy Schmidt.
Holy Schmidt!
When you walk into a car dealership and you finally sit down to discuss price, before you get into the negotiation, the salesperson will typically take out a form that looks a lot like a form to fill out your order at the diner and ask you some basic questions. And as you answer these questions, that salesperson will circle the answer. Are you looking to buy or lease? Then they'll circle the answer. Are you looking to pay cash or finance the car? And then they'll circle the answer. Are you looking for the lowest down payment or the lowest monthly payment? And then they'll circle that answer. And finally, are you going to be trading in another vehicle? Yes or no? And they'll circle that answer. What's really interesting here, if the salesperson is a good salesperson, they'll read these to you almost as if they have to get them out of the way. Like they're reading a form and they want to get into the real discussion, but this is part of the process. They'll read them one by one. But beware here. While it may seem like this is just a form at your local diner, the salesperson is actually setting you up for a lot of financial pain if you're not paying attention. I'll explain why that is throughout the whole video, but know right up front that what they really are focused in on that form is your payment and if you have a trade-in. They'll keep coming back to those 2 points again and again and again. No matter how much you want to talk about cash price, those are the 2 things that they're going to talk about. Why? Because they're on the form. And just because the salesperson doesn't appear book smart, it's important to note that you may not be the smartest person in that room, at least when it comes to car negotiations. So let's start with the truth. When most people go in, no matter how smart they are, they believe that there's only one real negotiation that's going to happen, and that's the price of the car. They think that that's where all of the value is. If the salesperson can get you to believe you won, you walk away feeling like a champion. And the salesperson has just earned more commission on that one sale than many people earn in a week. The fact is, a car dealership doesn't make most of its money on the cash price of a car. If you could somehow get the dealership down to what they actually paid for that car, you'd only be taking away 30, maybe 40% of the overall profit of the transaction. And they make big money here. And the reason is because most people think that they're going in and they only have one transaction that they need to negotiate. But the fact is there are at least 3 and sometimes 4 in most cases. The dealership will use the shell game of losing money in one category to make money in the other categories. And they'll do this in a very opaque way. What are the 4 categories? What are the 4 negotiations? Transaction 1 is the out-the-door price of the car. We'll discuss out-the-door price in just a moment. Transaction number 2 is the trade-in value they give you for your car. Yes, this is a real thing. They're not just throwing it in inventory or taking it to an auction. They actually make thousands of dollars on your trade-in. Transaction number 3 is the protection plan or the protection plans and other upsells in the finance manager's office. This is quite possibly their biggest profit maker. And transaction number 4 is the interest rate and tenor of the loan in the finance manager's office. This is a tie to protection plans in terms of profitability. So 2 of the 4 big money makers are in the finance manager's office. Sometimes the trade-in value is determined there as well. So 3 of the 4. And you think you're dealing with someone who's just processing your paperwork. But all of the action is in there, not out on the floor with the salesperson. Don't worry, I'm going to show you how to deal with 3 of the 4 of these if you invest about an hour's worth of your time before you go to the dealership. And I'll also show you how to manage the 4th, which is determining the trade-in value and getting the best possible price for your trade-in value, but that's a different process. If you're like most people, before you go to a car dealership, you've purchased a new buyer report from an organization like Consumer Reports. It's about $29.95. This report attempts to get you in the general zip code of what the car dealership actually paid for that car, but there are disclaimers all over the place. The report is slightly useful, I suppose, but people walk into that car dealership with that report like it's a suit of armor and slap it down like it's the ultimate gotcha. But the dealership has seen the report before, many times, and they probably know every single line on that report, even though they may be looking at it and looking at you like it's the first time they've seen it. And frankly, the report isn't 100% accurate. It probably doesn't capture some of the incentives between the manufacturer and the dealership. Still, if you get close to the consumer report's price, you think you got a great deal and the rest is just paperwork. This is where things go horribly wrong. So step one, know that you're negotiating with a professional car salesperson, not a good friend. They may seem like they're on your side, but they're not. The reason I say this is no matter how much you like the car salesperson, they are there to get you to pay the fully inflated price, if not more. So be wary if you feel like the two of you are negotiating against the sales manager. Let's go back and look at the items on the interview menu. Question number one is, are you going to be paying cash for the car or are you going to be financing it? Neither answer is a good answer. Here's why. If you say yes, you're paying cash for the car, you're going to have a much harder time getting a good cash price for the car because many of the other areas that they would ordinarily make money have just slipped away. This is because two of the other profit areas for the dealership are tied to your payment and their ability to edge it out just a few dollars for every add-on. Now, if you say, no, you will be financing the car, you will be caught in an endless loop of negotiating the payment, not the price of the car. Think about the last time you walked into a car dealership. One of the questions that they asked you after you said you wanted to finance the car is how much you can afford on your monthly payment and how much can you afford to put down. So take control and set the rules. When they start down this line of questioning, tell them that you want to agree the out-the-door price of the car, and you'll discuss financing with the finance manager. The out-the-door price, by the way, is the all-in price. It's the price of the car after you've negotiated it down, after all discounts, tax, license, everything, except for the upgrades which happen in the finance manager's office. So if you wrote a check and you had no upgrades, that check would be the out-the-door price. By the way, if you manage to flip the script and you talk to them about the out-the-door price, they will again try to get you to talk about the payment because they need to send you into the finance manager's office with something. They would love for you to say, I can put $4,000 down and pay $400 per month, because now they have something to work with. They can extend the number of months. 400 can become 410 or 415 or 450 if you have some nice upgrades, or 500 if you agree 425, 450 in the salesperson's presence, and then you go in for the upgrades in the office. The conversation is just turned into what you can afford, not what the out-the-door price of the car is. And by the way, if you give them a price, say $400 a month, they'll come back with an offensively high counter price from the sales manager, maybe $595. And so you'll feel like you got a great deal at $500. And by the way, they're expecting you to negotiate. If you don't negotiate, you're going to have a very, very expensive car. And not to be too offensive about it, but a lot of people who walk into a car dealership are not the best credit risk in the world, and they're just happy to get financing, period. And if getting credit approved isn't really the biggest deal in the world, a human being in real life thinks about how much money is going to come out of their bank account when they pay their down payment and how much they can actually afford to pay every month. And because of this, just about every customer will agree to play the car dealer's game. But that's a big mistake. Somewhere along the way, dealerships figured out that this is the best way to get people to buy really expensive cars. But it's not the way that most things are purchased. Imagine if you went to go buy a house and your real estate agent sat down with you and said, what's your price range? And you said $65,000 down and about $1,800 a month. They wouldn't know what to do with that. The real estate agent wouldn't know what to show you. Are they going to show you a $350,000 house, a $200,000 condo? They don't know what $65,000 down, $1,800 a month really means. Yet this is exactly how car dealerships negotiate. Real estate agents assume you have pre-approval, that you're financing the house through a third party. Of course, you show up with a pre-approval to make the process a lot faster. If you show up with a pre-approval at a car dealership, you're going to have a similar response to showing up with cash. If they ask you if you're financing through a third party, the answer is, I'm not sure yet. That's the only answer you can give, because again, you want to keep it as vague as possible until you get into the finance manager's office. And this isn't a confessional. Remember that no matter how much you like them, they are on the other side of the table. The next question is, are you going to trade in a car? The only answer is, I'm not sure yet. The fact is, the more valuable your car, the more money they stand to make. And if they can cut your car price by even 10-15%, they'll make thousands of dollars in most cases. If you arrive with a car with 200,000 miles, you're going to get a very low number. If you arrive with a car with 60,000 miles, they might offer you $5,000 knowing that they can sell it for $7,000, $8,000, or $9,000. It's that dramatic. The trade-in should be the last thing that you agree after you get the out-the-door price. Remember, you set the rules, and the trade-in may or may not be part of this transaction, but it's certainly something that isn't part of the out-the-door price. And for full clarity, when you do eventually show them your car, they're going to engage in psychological warfare. The salesperson or the finance manager will walk around it, and they'll touch every little ding and dent in the car, even if it's a tiny little one, and make sounds like and ooh, and other sorts of sounds that sound like they disapprove of how badly you took care of the car. They want you to believe that you're trying to trade in something of very little value. They want to help you get the best price, or at least that's what it feels like, but there's only so much they can do. The fact is, they can call the price within a few $100s, assuming the car has normal wear and tear and it hasn't been in an accident, over the phone in most cases. This is how dealerships trade cars with one another often. In some cases, it might be better for you to sell the car outright, but you need to know both the wholesale price of the car and the retail price of the car. There are a lot of places for you to start with this information. If you were to buy a used car and you went online, what are customer-to-customer prices for the type of car that you have? Okay, now assuming you're not selling it outright, at this point you have the out-the-door price and the trade-in price probably for your car, and you're heading into the finance manager's office. While the salesperson looks battle-worn, the finance manager is dressed like an accountant, and they look like they're just there to process your paperwork. When the sales manager tells the salesperson that you can only get this deal if you do it right here, today, the finance manager looks like he could care less whether you bought the car or not. Don't let that fool you. He may look like he's just processing your paperwork, but quite probably he is the best salesperson in the dealership. Now it's time to talk payment. When you sit down with the finance manager, he says to you something like, I assume that you have a payment in mind. To which you say yes, and I also have a pre-approval from my credit union or my bank. Here it is. And if you can beat the rate by 0.25%, then I'll finance the car through the dealership. If not, I'll just use my credit union's pre-approval and finance it through them and bring you a check. Immediately, alarm bells are going off in the finance manager's office because he knows that you know what you're doing. The fact is, in order for you to buy the upgrades that he wants to sell you, you need to think of them in terms of add-on payments to your base payment. Most people feel a lot less comfortable talking about a big cash price versus an additional $10 or $15 or $20 a month over, say, 72 months. So you need to get him there on the loan rate by saying something like, if you can get the financing cost to 0.25% less than what my bank is offering, I will be happy to listen to all of the protection packages that you have available. And if I feel like something is of value, I'll consider it. But I need to know what the rate is so I can compare the rate and the payment, of course, to what I have for my pre-approval. You've just checkmated the dealership because the shell game of conflating prices across the different value elements has just slipped out the door. At this point, he can't not tell you what your APR and your monthly payment are going to be. If he tells you he needs to run a credit check, tell him that you can come back. He'll figure it out right then and there. Bringing a pre-approval from a credit union or a bank does three things. First, it stops the shell game of raising the payment a few dollars to accommodate a lower down payment or a lower trade-in value, because you have the exact numbers, the exact interest rate right there in front of you. Next, it allows you to talk with clarity about the actual cost of the upgrades. And finally, it stops the discussion about your credit report and items that might be on your credit report or not, and their impact on your overall interest rate. If you like this video, please make sure you click subscribe and turn on notifications so that you get alerted the next time I post a video. I post about twice a week. This is Jeff Schmidt. Thanks for watching.